It's a Tuesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. We're talking two-man lineup data, digging into the numbers. We're talking getting Ja Morant going, coming out of the All-Star break, and also some X-factors for Memphis as their season resumes later on this week. You've come to the right place for Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. This is Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this Tuesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Joe Mullinax, once again flying solo. No DeMichael Cole of the Memphis Grizzlies beat from the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee, my co-host. He's catching his breath after a long weekend, covering Jaylen Wells and Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson Jr., Yuki Kamamura as well. All the fun out there at NBA All-Star and G League All-Star weekend. DeMichael will be back with us later on this week. Don't you worry. He's catching his breath, but I'm so glad you're with me on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. And I do want to give a programming note. There will not be a Wednesday episode of Locked On Grizzlies, barring some major news, injury-wise, or Memphis doing something unforeseen in the lead up to their return to practice on Wednesday, the game on Thursday against Indiana, or Friday in Orlando. We're going to take Wednesday off as a brief Locked On Grizzlies All-Star break. We'll be back on Thursday, DeMichael and I together, talking about that game against Indy, getting DeMichael's thoughts on practice from Wednesday as the team comes back together post-break. So again, no episode Wednesday. We'll be back with you Thursday. Excited for that and excited to be back with DeMichael on that show. On this show, we're going to dive right in and discuss how you should be an everydayer. And if you're not, like, comment, rate, review, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, literally anywhere that you get podcasts. You can make Locked On Grizzlies a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time that an episode drops, as we are free and available everywhere, thanks to being part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Also, make sure you're checking out our free daily newsletter, LockedOnDaily.com. Again, LockedOnDaily.com. It is free in your inbox almost every day. LockedOnDaily.com. Click on the Locked On Grizzlies tab and subscribe today if you have not already done so. And if you have done so, thank you so much for doing that. Fast Break Breakfast is a wonderful NBA podcast at Fast Break Break on X. Also does a great job with the Grits and Grinds podcast covering the Memphis Grizzlies. You should certainly check that podcast out after you check out Locked On Grizzlies. He uses Clean the Glass, and this is on X at Fast Break Break if you want to check it out for yourself. He uses Clean the Glass lineup data breakdowns. I love cleaning the glass. If you're an everydayer here on Locked On Grizzlies, you know that. I want to dive into some of the numbers that he found, and we're not going to go too deep, only a couple of takeaways for me here. But I do think it's important to, as we start to pontificate and theorize what the Grizzlies should do coming out of the All-Star break, knowing that the schedule is one of the toughest in the NBA for the remainder of the season. Some quick hitters in terms of what should not be done or what should be done. One thing that should not be done, at least in my opinion, is starting Gigi Jackson. And there's a chorus of social media users, folks in the comments, that talk about Gigi Jackson eventually being a starter on this team. I have fought against that because I think that the best use of Gigi is as a microwave bucket getter off the bench. We've seen Jackson have some success, not just last season, but also in a couple of games before the All-Star break, doing some really productive things as a bench member unit. Doesn't mean he doesn't play starter minutes, right? If Zach Edey and Jaylen Wells are only going to log 20 or so minutes a game, Gigi Jackson's probably getting the same amount of time, or at least he should, right? So I am cool with all of that involving Gigi Jackson. The main reason I am not cool with Gigi Jackson starting is, as of now, his net rating of minus 2.4 is really bad when he is next to two players in particular. Ja Morant, which is a massive problem for the whole starting unit thing, and Jaylen Wells. Jaylen Wells plays extremely well alongside the other starters. He is a plus 12.6 with Ja Morant. Wells is a plus 7.9 with Desmond Bane, a plus 12.1 with Jaren Jackson Jr. The player he has the best net rating with is his all-star rising star buddy, Zach Edey, plus 13.9. But those are all positive numbers for Jaylen Wells among the starting group. That starting five has a really impressive efficiency differential per cleaning the glass, one of the best in the NBA. Gigi Jackson has the worst ranking with Ja Morant. That possession number is low. That's important to point out. We need a larger sample size. Gigi and Ja per cleaning the glass have only been together for a total of 147 possessions. For comparison's sake, Ja has played more this season with Jay Huff than he has with Gigi Jackson. So do we need to see more of Gigi and Ja together before we say they shouldn't play together? Absolutely. But combining what I see Gigi's strengths are as a scorer and rebounder in particular, combining that with these numbers, I can confidently say that Gigi Jackson should not be starting for the Memphis Grizzlies. It should remain, at least for now, Jaylen Wells. Now, if you want to argue for Vince Williams Jr., 119 possessions of Vince Williams Jr. with Jaren Jackson Jr., plus 37. Plus 37 and 119 possessions together. That is a massive number. Need a larger sample size, of course. But you can argue for Vince Williams Jr. because of the way he plays the game, the way that he accentuates and builds upon what the current starters do well and what they can afford to improve upon. I think if you want to argue for Vince Williams Jr. in front of Jaylen Wells, you can, not Gigi Jackson. I would not start Gigi Jackson at this stage. And I also would do some serious considering of reducing the rotation. I don't think at this stage Memphis needs 11 guys in the rotation. And the first one that I would cut personally would be Scottie Pippen Jr. Scottie Pippen Jr. struggles with Jaylen Wells, minus 4.7 efficiency rating and 1,000 possessions. Struggles with Zach Edey, minus 3.8. Struggles alongside other players like Jay Huff, John Conchar, but those guys aren't going to be in the rotation, right? If you're talking about an 11-man run of Morant, Bane, Wells, Jackson Jr., Edey, Kennard, Aldama, Clark, Williams Jr., Gigi, and then Scottie Pippen Jr. is the 11th. I don't think that we need to continue to see Scottie Pippen Jr. getting run. I think those minutes should be scaled back. He's a plus 2.1, according to the chart that Fast Break Breakfast shared. Outside of Gigi Jackson, that's the worst net rating on the team. And if we're talking about ceilings, if we're talking about who we want to see be invested in terms of consistent minutes, Gigi, of course, makes more sense than Scottie Pippen Jr. for a litany of reasons. Maybe you're thinking, but Joe, Scottie Pippen Jr. is a true point guard. The Grizzlies need true backup point guard work. That might be true. But Desmond Bane has gotten a lot of reps doing just that. Not his strength, but he can do it. Luke Kennard has shown a real growth in that area of his game, or a resurgence, because he did it in Detroit a good bit. A resurgence in that area of his game over the last couple of months. Vince Williams Jr. has been tasked with facilitating offense in the past. And if we're talking about condensing rotations and we're talking about getting Ja Morant going, one of the major things that I'm going to discuss coming up is the importance of availability. Ja Morant, it's going to be hard for him to get going if he's not on the court. So Ja should be playing 34-ish minutes a game moving forward anyway, except for back-to-backs, like what's coming up later this week. If you want to limit those minutes in those situations, I understand. But an 11-man rotation at this stage of the season, as postseason preparations are firmly underway, do not make a ton of sense for this roster. So those would be my two takeaways. I would not start Gigi Jackson. I don't think he's going to anyway, but just to get out in front of that argument, maybe Gigi's a starter eventually. I would not do it right now. And if we're condensing the rotation from 11 to 10, my guy that's the odd man out right now is Scottie Pippen Jr. Now, the nice thing about this team is their depth. If Scottie Pippen Jr. has to go in for somebody that misses, that's fine. You have Marvin Bagley waiting in the wings as a bench big. Should he be in the rotation permanently? I don't think so. But foul trouble, injuries, illness happen. You get Bagley out there, he can play 12 to 14 minutes and probably not hurt you too much if you use him the right way in the dunker spot as an athletic big, not as someone that you count on for creating offense. Let me know on X at Joe Mullinax. Hit me up in the comments. How are you feeling? Again, at Fast Break Break on X. Great data dive there. I'm confident in saying G.G. Jackson should be a reserve, still getting lots of minutes, and I'm confident in saying Scottie Pippen Jr., if we're condensing from 11 to 10, he's the odd man out. Let me know what you think. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to prioritize getting Ja Morant going. Stick with us. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by TurboTax. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Go check out TurboTax today. Jaren Jackson Jr. is unquestionably the best Memphis Grizzlies player this season, right? The All-Star selection, likely All-NBA. Jaren's the guy. Make no mistake, though, if the Memphis Grizzlies are going to go on a postseason run, they need Ja Morant. Ja Morant has to be the Ja Morant of old. Maybe not in terms of mentality, no matter how he talks on social media about getting back into dunking. I'll believe that when I see it too. Ja being a consistent contributor to this Grizzlies roster at the caliber of player that we know Ja can be, that has to be a focus for Coach Taylor Jenkins and his staff going into this post-All-Star stretch. Ja is the X factor. We'll talk about other X factors later on in the show, but none of this matters if Ja Morant is not Ja Morant. They are not making a run to the Western Conference Finals without him in that mix. How do you get him going? The first thing that you have to do is you have to prioritize getting him different looks as a scorer. That matters a lot because especially against teams like the Los Angeles Clippers, against teams like the Houston Rockets, squads that he is eventually going to run into, you have to be able to get him going offensively. And part of that is helping him get to the rim and finish efficiently. He is finishing per cleaning the glass at 59% at the rim. That is the worst mark since his rookie season. The worst mark since his rookie of the season, according to Cleaning the Glass. That puts him in the 40th percentile for shooting efficiency. That is a problem, especially for somebody like Morant, who so much of his game is predicated on that space. But it's important to point out that it's not just his shooting at the rim that is down. His mid-range shooting is among the worst that he's had in several years. His three-point shooting, not atrocious at 34%. But that is something that you would like to continue to see growth in as well. And it's important to acknowledge that a lot of this comes down to Ja, right? It's Ja Morant prioritizing hitting those shots, getting to those spots. It's Ja utilizing his frame and how he finishes at and around the rim to get those easy buckets. Because Ja is not having the same success that he has had in the past in terms of finding a way to create offense, in terms of efficiency. This is not the same Ja Morant that we've seen that led the league in paint scoring as a point guard. That guy's not on the floor right now. How do you get him back? For me, it begins with his work with Zach Edey, who he has a pretty good relationship with in terms of a plus minus. Among all the starters, the Morant, Bane, Wells, Jackson Jr., Edey, starting five. Ja's plus 18.3 net rating or efficiency rating, again, per Cleaning the Glass and Fast Break Breakfast on X. That's the best that Ja has with anybody. Edey is to Ja as Steven Adams was to Ja, setting screens, enabling Morant to get downhill and get to the rim. But an important piece to that, and it's not all on Ja, is Taylor Jenkins acknowledging that that is where Ja Morant thrives. If playing fewer pick and roll sets is making your offense as a whole better, but individually is limiting Ja Morant, we are getting to the stage of the season where it has to be about maximizing your best players. Doesn't mean you throw out an offense that has led to one of the most prolific point outputs in NBA history. You maintain those things. But Taylor Jenkins himself has said, even in recent weeks, that the entire offense has not been implemented yet. Now's the time to do some more pick and roll stuff. Now is the time to get Ja Morant going downhill and having those screens be set for him and doing it early in games so Ja can get into a rhythm. Because if Morant is not able to be on the floor consistently and getting into those sets consistently, there are major concerns that I have about what Morant is going to be able to do offensively. He has to be productive in that space. And that availability piece, of course, is key for Ja. Ja has only played in 32 games so far this season, according to basketballreference.com. For comparison's sake, Jaren Jackson Jr. has played in 52 games. Desmond Bane has had his own injury issues this year, but he's played in 43 games. So Ja has missed a lot of time. Just being on the floor with these guys is going to pay dividends and increasing those minutes. Again, we talk a lot about the pace of the Memphis Grizzlies, how fast they play. Desmond Bane is the only player on the roster who averages more than 30 minutes a game. Jaren Jackson Jr. is right under it at 29.8. Ja only plays 28.8 minutes a game. I can tell you right now that if those minute totals stay the same, especially for Morant, but it's true of all three of them, if those minutes per game numbers stay the same going into the playoffs, you are going to have a very angry fan base, and I am going to support that anger. Your best players have to play. Your best players have to play. Scottie Pippen Jr. isn't one of your best players. He just isn't. He should not be taking those minutes. You want to play Zach Edey fewer minutes? He's averaging only about 20 minutes or so a game. Cool. I understand that. He should still be the starter because he does so well with Morant. And I would argue because he does so well with Morant, he should see those minutes increase. Jenkins has to trust these rookies a little bit more, especially Edey, because Edey helps maximize what Ja does best, creating that space for him to work off the dribble and get to the rim. I would also like to see Ja do more work alongside the likes of Luke Kennard, because Luke Kennard has a shooting capacity that is similar to Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane is a better basketball player than Luke Kennard, but Kennard can marry the two things because Ja has a solid relationship in terms of playing with Scottie Pippen Jr. Scottie Pippen Jr. plays better with Brandon Clark and Gigi, ironically, going back to those reserve minutes I was talking about. But Ja and Pippen Jr. play better together than you would think. Kennard does a lot of the same things as Pippen Jr., not the defender that Scottie is, admittedly, but Kennard is a better three-point shooter, and he can facilitate offense, and he allows for Ja to maximize what he can do on that particular end of the floor. And with Vince Williams Jr. back in the mold, you can have Kennard and Vince Williams Jr. next to Ja. And those are two secondary facilitators of offense that enable Ja to get off the ball more. If you want to do a lot of this pick and roll or non-pick and roll action, when Ja's on the floor, make him a wing. Not a true shooting guard for obvious reasons, but have him be the one that does the slashing and the cutting. Put him in that position. He's one of the most athletic players in the NBA. Don't expect him to have to force initiation and then let others cut and slash off of him. Let him be the one that does that stuff. Put him in those screen and dunker spot situations. Be creative. Think outside the box. But I can tell you this. You are not going anywhere as an organization in the postseason if Ja Morant is the Ja Morant that he is right now. The Grizzlies could very well lose in the first round in a loaded Western Conference. You need Ja Morant to get back to what he does best. He needs to be on the floor first and foremost. That's a very fair point. But assuming that availability, you need Ja Morant to slash and cut and be aggressive and attack in the lane. And as he grows and develops his game, that's more of an off-season thing. the floater coming back. That should be more consistent now. But a mid-range jumper, the three-point shot, he has to keep building that stuff. Hopefully in a year where he doesn't have an injury to rehab from, fingers crossed, he can do just that. But Ja needs to be unleashed. He is the X factor. If he doesn't get there, Memphis is not going anywhere. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we will close out this Tuesday episode of the show talking about other X factors heading into the post-All-Star slate. Stick with us. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Hungry Root. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, I've had this ongoing problem. I don't have the time. Work, life, trying to eat healthier. I'm constantly feeling stressed out. I go to the grocery store, buy things that I don't need, then have no time to cook any of it. And sticking to health goals, that was a struggle too. But everything changed when I discovered Hungry Root. Honestly, it's been a game changer. It's the easiest way to eat healthy without all the stress. With Hungry Root, it's like having a personal shopper and a nutritionist all in one. They take care of my grocery shopping, recommending meals and groceries based on my taste and health goals, whether it's high protein, gluten-free, and everything in between. And the best part, every meal is ready in 15 minutes or less. These are quick, healthy meals that are huge time savers and make healthy eating so much simpler. You are going to love Hungry Root as much as I do. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box and a free item in every box for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA. Do not miss out on Hungry Root. We'll finish up this Tuesday edition of the show. Brief reminder, there will be no Wednesday edition of the show. DeMichael and I will take one last breather heading into the post-All-Star slate. We'll be back on Thursday to preview Pacers, Grizzlies, and so much more. Other X factors, other guys that matter a lot to this Grizzlies team. And I mentioned him briefly earlier in the show, but I think the greatest X factor for the Memphis Grizzlies is Taylor Jenkins. And hopefully you're an everydayer and you're sitting there and you're thinking, pause. Taylor Jenkins does not actually play for this team. He's just a coach. Yes, that's true. But in the past, watching this Taylor Jenkins era, one of the biggest criticisms of Taylor Jenkins is that he's not very flexible. The adjustments and adaptations of scheme don't really come about, right? Whether it's leaving wide open three-point shooters that get hot, the defensive sets that work a majority of the time, right? The Grizzlies have been elite defensively a lot of the time that Taylor Jenkins has been in Memphis. He deserves credit for that. But there are times where the Grizzlies get cooked and you don't necessarily see in-game adjustments to the rate that you'd like to. That can also be applied offensively. We talked about Ja Morant and how he's best in the pick and roll. Best with Zach Edey. Yet Zach Edey doesn't get as much time as perhaps he should on the court because of the offense itself not necessarily being fit overall to Zach Edey's strengths. That's a problem. There has to be adaptation. There has to be adjustment. There has to be a way to maximize what these guys do. You can't just say this is what we is and this is what it is and we are what we are and we can't change. In a 7-game series, you think these good teams are cracking the code of the Memphis Grizzlies offense now? Imagine when they have a week to game plan, when there are no back-to-backs, there is no extended travel. You're going from Memphis to Houston or Memphis to LA, Memphis to Minnesota. You're there for a couple days. You can practice. You can watch film. You have to be able to have your best players in the best spots. If you don't think Zach Edey is one of your best players, fine. I promise you Ja Morant is. So Taylor Jenkins has to be able to execute these adjustments and put these guys in positions to be successful. Taylor Jenkins is my number one X factor. Another really important X factor is Brandon Clarke. Because on a roster where there is only one other true big beyond Zach Edey, and that's Marvin Bagley. And you can say Jaren Jackson Jr. is a big, of course, but he plays a lot like a perimeter wing, especially on offense. Brandon Clarke has to play bigger than his size, and to his credit, he has. The only guy that he really struggles with is Jay Huff. And even that is a minus 3.9 in terms of net rating, according to Cleaning the Glass and Fast Break Breakfast on X. Brandon Clarke has been an extremely productive player. And I am happy to admit that I was wrong about Brandon Clarke. I was worried about Clarke coming back from that Achilles injury. He is back, and he may not be the explosive guy that he was once upon a time. He still shows flashes of that leapability and re-leapability. Maybe it's not there as much as it used to be, but he still has the floater, and he still has that lateral movement that is so critical to the way that the Grizzlies want to defend, especially when he's next to Jaren Jackson Jr. Their defensive numbers are impressive. Brandon Clarke has a plus 9.7 pairing with Jaren even now. That's his best partnership over 1,000 reps. Scottie Pippen Jr., pretty close. They're almost at 1,000 possessions. But Jaren and Brandon continue to click. Brandon Clarke has to be malleable with all those key pieces. His numbers with Gigi, I'd like to see improve, minus 1.7 in the lineup data. But Brandon is so strong with everybody else, I foresee that going up. Brandon Clarke matters a lot to this Grizzlies team in terms of providing that critical front court depth, being a rebounder, being a strong defender, doing those things next to Santi Aldama, next to Jaren Jackson Jr. If he can't, the Grizzlies have problems. And my final X factor going into the post-All-Star slate is Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane matters so much for this Grizzlies team for so many reasons. But Desmond Bane has to be the guy that is a three-point maven. Desmond Bane is shooting the three ball at almost 40% in terms of conversion rate. That's excellent. That's what I like to see, right? Desmond Bane is only shooting 5.7 threes a game right now, per game. And again, if you compare that to 30 or per 100 possessions, that's important to point out because the minutes are down. That's still 8.7 threes per 100 possessions, according to Basketball Reference. That is the second fewest amount of threes for Desmond Bane per 100 possessions in his NBA career. Almost as little as what he took his rookie season. That is unacceptable to me. Per 100 possessions, just last year, Desmond Bane was taking 12.2 threes per game, and he made 38% of them. That's 4.6 makes a game. If Desmond Bane were to shoot at that rate now, 12.2 attempts per 100 possessions, he would make almost roughly five threes a game. Do the math, folks. That's an additional 3 to 4 points, roughly, depending on the game, per 100 possessions. Desmond Bane has been tasked with being a downhill facilitator. He's been tasked with being a cutter in this new look offense. Desmond Bane is being asked to do too much of that. Desmond Bane, per 100 possessions, is having more turnovers this season than he ever has. Roughly the same as last year, but again, on a larger pace size because the team is playing so much. His decision-making, his issues with creating off of the dribble consistently, he should not be a primary creator. He should be a guy who does that off the bounce, off initial passes once his three-point shot is not there. But who does it come back around to? Desmond Bane doing this because it's part of the scheme? Probably so. That's another adjustment that has to be made. Desmond Bane should be shooting the three ball a heck of a lot more. And if he does, you'll see the turnovers go down and the three-point shooting go up and scoring will go up. What a coincidence that will be. Desmond Bane, Brandon Clarke, those guys are my biggest X factors going into this post-All-Star slate. What are you guys thinking? How do you feel about that? Hit me up on X. Let me know in the comments. Remember, no show on Wednesday, taking Wednesday off. One last breather before post-All-Star fun begins. We'll be back with you on Thursday. The Grizzlies will practice on Wednesday more than likely as they return from the break. DeMichael Cole will be back with us, giving us insights on that, previewing Grizzlies, Pacers, and so much more. Going to be a lot of fun. We'll catch you back here on Thursday. No Wednesday show. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Make DeMichael and myself part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. We are so grateful, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, that you are with us each and every time that we are here on Locked On Grizzlies. And make sure you're checking out the Locked On Daily free daily newsletter, lockedondaily.com. It's free in your inbox, words from me on the Grizzlies and so much more, fantasy basketball advice, NBA news at large. LockedOnDaily.com, click on the Locked On Grizzlies tab and subscribe to our free daily newsletter. I'm Joe Mullinax. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Enjoy your Wednesday as well. We'll catch you back here on Thursday, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts, YouTube twice, doubled over. We'll catch you next time. See you.